Customers of InsideSales.com know how to sell. They're the best sales teams in the world, and they operate like high-performance machines running on rails. The key to their success? Business process. Once a month, these top executives get together for 3 days to share their business processes, best practices, and strategies. This exclusive gathering is called Speed Camp. Speed Camp is facilitated by experts from InsideSales.com's Momentum team. At Speed Camp, executives first work together to solve an opening case challenge. Then, they get coached on InsideSales.com best practices, practices that developed from decades of research. Finally, coaches and executives roll up their sleeves and work together on individualized success plans. Speed Camp is hosted at Sundance, Utah. For 3 days, InsideSales.com takes care of everything. 5-star accommodations, black car service, and the beautiful Wasatch Mountains provide the perfect setting for 100% focus on improving sales results.
I thought it was really cool to be able to talk to other people who manage and deal with inside sales organizations and hear different perspectives.
I thought the case study was awesome.
The benchmarking exercise, showing where we rank with others in the industry.
I can't say anything but positive things about the Momentum team.
InsideSales.com customers know how to sell. Speed Camp gets them to the next level.
Hey guys, looks like we have critical mass on the webinar today. We're excited I'm excited to introduce our guest. I'm Dave Boyce. I run the Momentum strategy team at InsideSales.com. Momentum runs the Speed Camp that you just saw the video for. We also do work with our most strategic customers on delivery of benefit on our platform. But this is not about me. We're going to introduce Mike Schultz in 1 second. Let me get to some housekeeping. We're going to spend about an hour with you. There will be some Q&A at the end. You can type Q&A, any questions you have in the Q&A box as you think of them. If we are able to answer them in line, we will, but we'll definitely have some time at the end. Please tweet out or use the hashtag ISDC webinar with any comments or questions or observations for your social network. And we're also going to be recording this, and at the end we'll show you how to access the recording at the end. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our guest. You've all heard of the RAIN Group. The RAIN Group is a worldwide organization for sales, research, consulting, and training. They've got locations in the U.S., Canada, Switzerland, South Africa, India, Australia, and the co-president of the RAIN Group, Mike Schultz, is our guest today on this webinar. Mike is a best-selling author. He also has degrees from both Brandeis and Babson, and a lot of us can say we have degrees, but not all of us can say that our alma maters invited us back to teach. So Mike has been a professor at both Babson and now at Brandeis. And today we actually get a preview of some original research that's been conducted by the RAIN Group. And so this is kind of an exclusive unveiling here. I'm excited to turn the microphone over to Mike. Take it away.
All right, thanks, David, and thanks to everyone for joining us today, and thanks to the team at Inside Sales. And I'd also like to say something that David said, that it's not about him today. It's also not about me. It's about you. And I'm going to predict, and my goal is to make sure that this isn't just the next webinar that you watched, okay, that was worthwhile, but after viewing this, I'm going to predict that you'll be changed. And that you'll either change in one or two ways. You'll change how you think about something regarding how to drive sales performance, or perhaps you'll be reminded of something that will tell you, wow, I'm going to do something different. So you're either going to change how you think or change how you do things, or what you're going to do to drive sales performance heading into next year. And so, as David said, he's really excited about what we're going to talk about. I'm very, very excited for what we're going to talk about, because we're going to be talking about something that you'll watch it again and again. You'll laugh, you'll cry, you'll curl up by the fire with your General Foods International coffee, because we are going to be talking about the most exciting thing in the world, and that is data. How very exciting, data, yes. But we're going to talk about data, about something that is near and dear to all of us. When I think about what's near and dear to all of us, I think about what the two sales guys talking at the end of the day, what they talk about. Well, one sales guy turns to the other sales guy and says, "How was your day?" He said, "Oh, it was a great day. I got 2 proposals out for business that I think looks really good. I actually heard back from someone saying, thanks for the proposal. We're excited to dive into this at first pass. It looks pretty on target. I've been trying to get through to this one particular buyer for 6 months, and I finally got through to them, and I'm really looking forward to finally meeting with them." He said, "My perseverance over time," and he said, "Why don't you come on in and I'll meet with you." And one of my buyers that's been buying from me for years said that it looks good for next year too. So I had a great day, and he turns to the other one and says, "How was your day?" And the guy said, I didn't sell anything either." And that's the fun part about sales. Fun part about sales is that there's a score. And the sellers that win and the organizations that win don't just get pats on the back. They're the ones that make all the money, they grow their business, and they're able to do the things in their lives what they really want to do. So the question is, what is it that the top performing sales organizations do that set them apart from the rest of the sales organizations? Well, we wanted to study this. So here at the Rain Group Center for Sales Research, we studied 472 participants across 26 industries, and it was a global study. We talked mostly to sales managers and leaders, but we also wanted to talk to sellers to see if they had the same or different takes on the same issues that we were asking about. And as well, we were looking at mid-sized and large organizations. We were not really looking at smaller onesie, twosie, or 5Z kind of people or seller organizations. Our minimum was 10 sellers. The average sellers were in the hundreds, and as you can see, we had some organizations, actually a quarter of our respondent base, more than a quarter, was from organizations of $1 billion or more. And the questions that we wanted to ask, or the questions that we wanted to answer, are what do these best companies do? Because as leaders in sales organizations, we have lots of choices. We can focus on strategy and go-to-market strategy and pricing. No, we should make sure we have the right technologies in place to drive sales enablement. Well, it's not just sales enablement. We need to make sure our data is right, because if we're working off of bad data and we don't have visibility into our pipeline, it's really a problem. Well, geez, our guys need more skills. No, it's not that they need more skills. It's that we need better guys. No, it's not that we need better guys. It's just that we need better sales managers to make sure they're focused on the right thing and motivated. So what are the things that we should do to drive sales? And it sort of reminds me of one of my favorite, kind of dating myself here, Henny Youngman quotes. He says, he walks in the doctor's office and he says, "Hey doc, I broke my legs in 2 places." And the doctor says, "Well, quit going to those places." Well, what are those places that we all go to in sales that don't make that much of a difference? And what are those places in sales that do make a lot of difference? That's what we're going to talk about today. But before we get going, I want to share with you, if you're looking for the nugget, the silver bullet, the one thing that you can do to change your fortunes of your whole sales organizations, you're going to be disappointed. Now, it's actually interesting, because that's how people position what they do and what they sell is going to revolutionize your business. And I was actually talking to the sort of one of the most respected people ever in sales, Neil Rackham, who founded a company called Huthwaite, wrote the most purchased sales book of all time, Spin Selling. And we talked about this for a while, and in my last book, he wrote the following in the foreword. And he said, "I ask you to forgive me a moment's bitching if I pick out a particularly unhelpful trend in many of these about to become best-selling business books, especially in those in sales that use what I call Armageddon selling formula. The approach goes something like this. Everything you've ever learned about sales is wrong. Unless you stop doing it instantly, your sales efforts will die shortly in agony. There is, however, one simple cure that I've discovered, and then they put in their particular thing that is the simple cure. And he even wrote forward, he said, the Armageddon approach to sales doesn't help anyone. When, for example, a serious journal like the Harvard Business Review publishes an article titled The End of Solution Sales, it damages the credibility of all involved. So there's no silver bullet. There's no thing I'm going to turn on your head. But if you want to be a leader, if you want to build the house that will stand the test of time, then we have some real interesting things we're going to share with you. So the first question is, what is a top performer? Well, we came across a whole bunch of definitions, and I don't mean the person, I mean the organizations. And a lot of it was, well, they hit their goals. I saw one recently from research that said, they're able to handle the different and changing customer requirements. Well, I didn't necessarily like that as a top performer. It's a noble thing. But we said, all right, what we want to do is we want to make sure they hit their goals. So we have that the organizational sales goal is met. But we didn't want to know if it was just a goal. Well, what if that goal was really low and people sleepwalked their way to meeting it? Well, we wanted to know if that goal was at least, they couldn't disagree that it was challenging. So it had to at least somewhat be challenging. We wanted to see which organizations were able to hit their challenging goals while they also maintained premium pricing, that their revenue and profitability grew. And as well, we parceled out our database of respondents for those that had the stronger win rates for their proposed or quoted business. So in aggregate, 20% of the group met that top performer category in the middle. There were 7% that were elites, that were really getting the top performance. And then there was 80% of people that we just called the rest. So we're going to compare the top performers, the elite performers, and the rest across a number of fun categories. But first, before we look at our first piece of data, I want to ask you a question. And the question goes like this. Our organization focuses on driving maximum value for the customer. So if you could just take, 15 seconds or so and say, I agree, or I strongly agree, my organization focuses on driving maximum value from the customer, or I'm neutral on that, or no, not really. I can't say that permeates the organization. So let's go ahead just another 5 or 10 seconds here. All right. Now let's see what we have for results. So we have strongly agree 53%, agree 38%, so almost 87% of you agree or strongly agree, and we have neutral disagree and strongly disagree, totaling a little over 10%. Well, here are the things that we found in our top performer database. The elite performers, we would have 91% agreed or disagreed. The top performers, 81% agreed or disagreed. And only 6 out of 10 of the rest agreed or disagreed. And it was kind of funny. If you ask anyone, hey, does your organization focus on value? Oh, that's at the heart of everything that we do. But if you ask them in a confidential survey, what do you really think? And they have a minute to think about it. Well, it's really kind of interesting. So, I thought that this was pretty wild. Like literally 4 out of 10 companies don't agree that their organization focuses on driving maximum value for the customer. And I thought that was pretty interesting. But we had 5 questions in our database that focused on the concept of value. We had 75 factors that we studied in this research. So that number 1 you just saw, our sales organization focuses on driving maximum value for the customer. Number 2 is that our sales force structure is aligned with the way our customers prefer to buy from us. Number 3 is the process is customer focused, our sales process, and it maps to our buyer's buying process. That our sales process is flexible to apply to various buyers, their roles, their needs, their situations. And this is a different one that we asked, not just about process in the organization, but our company leaders prioritize developing sellers to be as valuable as possible to buyers. For the folks that agree or strongly agree with all of these questions, it was 16% of the database. And we termed these folks the value-driving sales organizations. Now, it's interesting to just think about the value-driving. This says that culturally we believe it, sales enablement structure and operations, we've aligned like that, and our leaders are driving our sellers to actually be valuable to customers. Well, what kind of effect does that have if you are what we call the value-driving sales organization? Well, you are much more likely to grow your revenue. Your win rate was significantly higher, and I know you might see 54% compared to 45% win rate. That's the win rate on the proposed or quoted business. If you do the sensitivity analysis and you take the amount of business you propose a year and you put in a percent in an Excel spreadsheet for what the close rate is, let's call it 40%, and then you put in your average close or your average size of sale or your average size of account, and you just play with that, make it 40%, then make it 42%, and make it 44%, it's a huge difference. I mean, it's ridiculous how much your revenue goes up if your close rate, your win rate of your proposed or quoted business goes up. And then finally, there's an interesting cultural aspect. We asked whether for your sales turnover, are they people you wanted to leave because they weren't performing or they were underperforming? Or are they people that, I can't believe we lost them. They were great. So that's what we called undesired turnover. I didn't want them to leave, but they left anyway. So they were able to retain their better sellers at a much higher rate than the non-value driving sales organization. That's just if they agreed or strongly agreed to 5 questions. Pretty wild. All right. So we know that, and this goes to that point about that the organization's leaders prioritize sellers to be more valuable. Well, we studied what buyers think of sellers. We studied 731 individual B2B purchases in a different study from buyers that represented $3.1 billion of products and services purchased. So, you could say that there's a pretty good decision-maker group in here. And we asked them to compare a seller that they awarded business to for a real purchase they made to their experience with the sellers who came in the closest second place. And the sales winners were twice as likely to make the case for the superior value that they offer. And I thought that was, so it's not only true of the individual sellers, if the sellers can make the value case and the organization focuses on value, what a multiplier effect that would be on your sales results. So, interesting conversation that I had with a seller, I don't know, I think it was probably a year or so ago. She was selling a technology. Her average sale is about $100,000. This particular sale is going to be $400,000. And she was whining to me that after 9 months of working a sale, having the opportunity all squared away, all the buyers were talking to, she understood all their needs. The ROI case that she said was rock solid. It was going to be a 10-to-1 return within 6 months, and it was going to continue to return year after year after year. And they decided to do nothing. They tabled it and said, let's come back to it later. Well, just given the nature of what we do here at Rain Group, I was able to speak with that buyer and see what they thought. And I said the same thing, it's my understanding that the ROI case was pretty good, and the seller told me that, she didn't think that, that really came across. And he was like, oh, no, I got it. I saw it. It was a 10-to-1 return in 6 months, and it was going to keep returning year after year. He said, I saw it. I understood it. I didn't believe it. So there was a part of the value proposition that the seller didn't even believe that she had to make. Now, if you, and this is where, there's the strategy and structure part of what we're doing. A lot of what we're talking about today is about driving an organization forward. It's, strategic kind of stuff, but I wanted to throw in some selling tips here too. For any sale, if you want to make sure that you lock down that value message, all you have to do is answer 4 questions. You need to make sure you resonate with the buyer, and to do that, you have to answer the questions, why should they act, and why should they act now? So why should they act is why it's important, and why should they act now is why it's urgent. If you can do that to yourself, then you have a pretty compelling case for driving change and driving a decision. once you drive a decision, you have to say, well, why us? So you have options. Many of your buyers have options for where they can get a solution. So if the buyer's going to do something, probably, why should they choose you? So why act, why now, why us? And then the last one is where the other seller fell down, is why trust. So you want this. There's a good return. I know why I should act and why I should act now, but why am I going to believe it's going to work? Because we've all been sold a bill of goods in the past, whether it's in business or something at home, where someone promised something and they just didn't deliver. Or even they delivered the thing, but they just didn't get the results that were promised. But if you can answer these questions, why act, why now, why us, and why trust, for any sale, you will be able to make that value case and win a lot more. So, I know that we were talking about 5 keys to increasing your win rate. Number 1, kind of obvious, is drive value. It's kind of obvious that it drives your win rate, at least that's for sure. So, let's continue along. We asked in this research what the top priorities were for sales initiatives. Essentially, we're asking the sales leaders, what you going to do next year to drive results? You know, what's sort of top on your mind of when you have your proactive time to push something forward that's important. What are you going to push forward? Well, I'm going to show you 3 out of the top 4 here. 3 out of the top 4 were improving our ability to communicate value. You see the nice operational transition I had right there from the one before. But that's also part and parcel of your opportunity planning approach. If this other seller had answering those questions as a part of how they vetted their own opportunities, she might not have lost on the risk challenge that she didn't substantiate, the why trust, and then optimizing the sales process, which we talked a little bit about before. Not only should it be value driven and flexible to match against your buyer's buying process, but as well, what about making sure you're doing all sorts of things in your process to help sellers sell? Giving them tools and resources that increase their effectiveness in every stage and increase their efficiency in every stage so they can make more sales. So these are kind of important. These are important things that are on the minds of leaders. But there's this interesting little trend in the world of selling, and this is a strategic trend. If something gets into the Harvard Business Review, this is the part where I'm going to pick on them for the second time. There's something in the Harvard Business Review, this is just last year, it's called Dismantling the Sales Machine, and it says, and I quote, "Sales leaders have long fixated on process discipline, but recently sales has been caught off guard by a dramatic shift in customers' buying behavior. Even as leadership has tightened compliance with the processes that have served so well, sales performance has grown increasingly erratic. The sales machine is stalling. Leaders must abandon their fixation on process compliance and embrace a flexible approach to selling driven by sales reps' reliance on insight and judgment." So throughout the process, tell them to use their spidey sense and figure it out as they go. Is that what we should be doing? Well, it was in the Harvard Business Review, but the top sales priorities of leaders is exactly the opposite of what the Harvard Business Review says to do. So one of the things we wanted to do is we wanted to study what was the effect of having mature and effective sales processes. And here's some of the things that we found. So we studied our research respondents on a 5-point scale, and that essentially matched what we call our sales maturity framework. And if you were a 5 out of 5 on maturity, we called you world class. If you were 4 out of 5, we called you managed, and if you were 3 out of 5, we called you defined. A 2 was emerging and 1 was ad hoc, but we really wanted to look at the organizations that had at least something in place. The ones that really had nothing going on, they were chaos, as you can imagine. They didn't do well across a lot of these categories. So their win rates, if your sales process is more mature, win rates go up. Okay, well then we know that's kind of important because I said before that sensitivity and win rates, if your win rate ticks up a little, your sales tick up a lot. All right, so then we looked at those other questions. The sales process is customer-focused and maps to the buying process. Well, geez, the elite and top performers were much better at that one, and the rest, they weren't so good. And then the sales process is flexible to apply to buyers' various roles and situations. Same kind of data. It was 50% to almost 75%, half to two-thirds compared to the elite performers, and the top performers were much closer to the elites. So, you know what? If your sales process is completely amazing, and you're a 5 out of 5, yeah, sure. Don't try to turn the screws more and more and more. You can, continue to optimize, and that's fine, but turn your attention elsewhere. But if you're a 3, if you're a 2, you want to get to a 3. If you're a 3, you want to get to a 4. And if you're a 4, you want to get to a 5. And so until you're actually good at this, don't abandon it. And it's actually kind of interesting. Of the 75 factors that we looked at, we also looked at a whole bunch of sales skills. And the number one skill of elite performers, the number one skill that they had was driving and winning sales opportunities. And that's all about managing your sales process, how you shepherd in a systematic way a new potential business opportunity into an actual client. So the best organizations are actually doing this. They are optimizing their sales process, and they are optimizing their opportunity management processes and making sure that their people have those particular skills. So number 1 was drive value. Number 2, optimize sales process and opportunity management. All right, continuing along with our fun. We asked another question of our 75, and this one other question was the number 1 difference of all questions. This was the biggest gap between the top performers and the rest of all of the questions that we asked. And the things that the top performers were, as a percent, that much better at was this one. Our sales organization is effective at maximizing sales to existing clients across our capability areas. So it's really kind of interesting. You'll hear all sorts of different kinds of stats about how selling to existing customers is 5 to 7 times less expensive than trying to sell to new customers and new logos, and that's true. It's true enough that one of the more recent studies that we did, it's actually looking back, it was a couple of years ago because I know it's on our calendar to update next year, is the best practices in strategic account management. And it's true, the ones that are really good at strategic account management actually get much better results. And I said that of the top priorities, it makes sense. I mentioned the 3 out of 4. 3 out of 4 of the top priorities last year were mostly around value and sales process. And the 4th of the top priorities said increasing existing business with existing accounts is a top priority for the year ahead. But take a look at the gap in skills between the top performers and the rest with their sellers and their ability to drive sales growth. 65% of top performers said the sellers had the ability to drive account growth, but only 43% of the rest did. So it can be a top priority, but literally if you give a task to someone who is incapable of doing it, you're going to be in big trouble. So I want to give you one other quick tip for more of like the actual selling tip for something that I think more companies should be doing in sales, in strategic account management. And I'm going to tell you a little story about a gentleman named Kurt Lewin. And for those of you that don't know Kurt Lewin, he was one of the founders of organizational psychology. Now, this is, we're going back many, many years. We're going back 7 or 8 decades. So Kurt Lewin, he set up a test, a psychology test with 2 groups of, at the time, what they would call homemakers. It's not the word we would use now, but that's the word that's in the study. So his team lectured the first group of all the reasons and benefits of eating intestinal meat. And that's because the purpose of this study was, let me see if I can influence, if I can persuade homemakers to serve their families intestinal meat. So the first group, he lectured them with all the benefits. He applied social pressure, and he played on their sense of patriotism. He said, you'll help the war effort. This was during World War II. They even brought in other homemakers to talk about how much their families loved intestinal meat, and then gave them all sorts of recipes to try. That was group number 1. Group number 2 went like this. The study leaders went in and they asked the homemakers. They told the homemakers what they wanted to do. We want to see if we can get other homemakers to serve intestinal meats for their family. And they asked them one question. They said, does anyone have any ideas? And then a conversation ensued, and that was it. So imagine the difference. I think we all know that more of the second group got their families to serve or served intestinal meat to their families. But they did it as a factor of 10. 3% of the first group, the one that was lectured, did, and 32% of the collaborative discussion group did. And in our research on strategic account management, we found that the sellers that had a process for evaluating the ways that they could provide additional value for buyers internally, and then equally applied the same process for evaluating with their buyers new ways that they could drive more value for them, and they collaborated with them on it, they were much higher to be in the top performer group. So you could think about strategic account management process, about skills, about all sorts of different kinds of things. But if you just get in your mind the first part that we talked about, add value, and then, of course, add some process. But the one thing you want to think about is collaborate with them. So there's point number 3, grow your existing accounts. It makes a huge difference. That's what the top performers are doing. And if you can set up your apparatus to do it well, then you will be very successful. Now, let's continue along with our fun. Okay, so we also looked at organizational factors like sales training investment, sales training focus, sales training effectiveness. We looked at different enablement kinds of things, and these are just some of the things that really stood out for us in sales training and as well overall in sales enablement. So, interesting couple of stats. The investment and focus on sales training at the elite and top performers was much higher. It's almost a factor of 3 from the elite to the rest, whereas only a quarter of the rest say that our organization, they agree that they focus on sales training and that they invest in it. Now, interestingly, even lower for the rest, only 14% of people in the rest say sales training is effective. That means that 86% of the sales training that is happening at most of the companies around the world that we studied is ineffective. And yet somehow, 14, 28, almost 4 times as many of the elite group are able to get sales training to be effective. They invest more, they do it right, they don't want to just do some training, but they say, I want to build skills. And I want those skills to be enabled into behaviors that our sellers exhibit with our buyers. So they don't view it as training, they view it as change. I want different things to happen. And when being in the sales consulting and training business, we see a lot of people go through a maturation of how they view sales training. Sometimes they'll call us and they'll say, hey, can we do some training? We have 4 hours in an event, and we want to teach them how to grow existing accounts, win opportunities, be different than their competitors, and make our value proposition sing. Like, in 4 hours? Yeah, sure, I can have that done in 2. What can we do for the rest of the time? So they have this sort of outsized expectation of what they can get for the input. And then as they mature, they realize we have to focus and invest more in sales training if we want to get the results. So not only do they have better sales training investment and effectiveness, it equates to higher levels of skill. The top performing organizations, and again, the stratifications in these were pretty wild, so I thought it was worthwhile to share. Driving and winning sales opportunities, as I mentioned, that was the highest thing for the elites. Then filling the pipeline was pretty high for the elites, and it was just awful for the rest. Core consultative selling skills and advanced consultative selling skills. We viewed core as things like understanding need, crafting a compelling solution, depicting the impact of what they're going to do as core, and advanced was providing advice, driving new ideas, challenging buyers' thinking, and helping them to make better decisions in ways that they might not have been considering until they talked to the seller. Driving account growth was huge for the elites and pretty bad for the rest. So you can just see that the investment in training and the skills were much higher in the top and elite organizations. So that brings us to number 4. These were, there were about 1,500 pages of data that we poured through. We boiled that down to about 150 pages of statistically significant results, and what you're seeing are the starkest things that we found that most separated. And one of them was their focus and investment in sales training. Now, bringing us home, where we'll turn it back over to the folks from Inside Sales and Q&A, we'll look at a little bit more. Okay, so we found much more effective sales management at the elite and top performers. This is just a huge leverage point. So sales management, we asked a bunch of questions, but here's 3. Sales management gets maximum performance from the sellers. A whole lot more in the elites and tops than in the rest. They create and sustain maximum energy from the sellers. More than 3/4 at the elites, less than 1/3 at the rest. And then they have the necessary skills to coach and manage sellers. More than double at the elites versus the rest for whether or not their sales managers have skills. Now think about this for a second. Sales managers need to manage and coach. That's what they're there for. And we're saying that at 80% of companies that we studied, if you line up 10 sales managers, 7 of them are awful. Because the people at the organizations are literally saying they don't even have the skills. Like they shouldn't even be in the job. And yet they're this massive leverage point for success. So we know that sales management is important. We know that sales culture is important because we looked at all the value and the great support and the training which adds to the culture. So with the skills, we know the will do, and with the culture and the sales management and the right motivation structures and right enablement, we help them with the will do. But finally, one more poll, I want to ask you guys the question, and that is when our sales leaders set a priority, that priority gets done. So when our leaders set a priority, the priority gets done. So let's just think about your company leadership and be honest. How good are they? This year we're going to do this and we're going to do that, and this is how we're going to change. Does it happen, or does it happen not so much, or sometimes yes, sometimes no, or you tell me what you think. So another 5 seconds, and then we'll click over to the next slide of results. So you guys have pretty good management teams. So we're going to say 55, 57 or so % agree or strongly agree, and we have 40-something % are neutral or worse, where you're literally saying, geez, at best, metza kind of thing. Well, guess what? The leaders were much more effective at the elite and top performers than they were at the rest. But as well, if you look at this first data point, they also don't prioritize improving sales force effectiveness. So at about half of the rest companies, if you said, hey, dear leaders, you think that this is important? And they'll say, no, not really. We're working on technology, we're working on operations, we're working on marketing, we're working on product development, we're working on something. But are we really working on sales leadership and sales effectiveness? About a little more than half, or a little less than half would say, nah. But 80% of the elite performers do, and 70% of the top performers do. But then, even if they prioritize it, just like you guys said, well, what if it doesn't get done? Our leaders prioritize something, but they're ineffective in making those kinds of changes. So let's do some multiplication. Let's just do it easy for me. At the rest organizations, if about 50% are prioritizing sales, but then only half of them can get things done, that's only 25% of the organizations that are able to affect the changes that they need and drive the initiatives that they need to get sales success. and 75% then don't. And that's the major difference. And if you take 80% times 80%, so that's more like 64. So 64% or 62%, if I drop it down a little bit, of the elites are able to get the things done, and only about 25% of the rest. So pretty wild. And that's where I'll say that we can do the statistics, and we can figure out for an organization, and we can do the consulting, and we have done the consulting to help leaders see how they can make a huge difference in their sales success, the things that are right for them to grow their companies. And we had one organization where we did this with, and we ran our sales benchmark analysis and planning process. And they said, wow, we can grow from this percent to that percent. I think it was literally something like 4 or 5% organizational growth up to 12. If they were able to change some things in their sales forces, that should affect some results. That should make a huge difference for their growth. And they saw it. And from a substantiation perspective, they believed it. And they worked with us on the process. So they sort of believed it was all true and real, which is important for all leaders to believe if they're going to pursue a certain path. But they didn't do it. And you know what they told us? They said, we don't want to work that hard. So it still does come down to leadership. I know it's the end of every webinar for every strategic thing that's important. If leadership gets behind it and leadership is effective, you can make all sorts of change. And it reminds me of the old one. How many psychologists does it take to change a light bulb? How many psychologists does it take to change a light bulb, Mike? Well, folks, I'm glad you asked. It only takes one, but the light bulb has to want to change. And that is what I will leave you with from a content perspective here in the program. If you want to change, if you want to drive sales performance, if you're willing to say what we did last year may or may not have been good enough, and next year we're going to make a big difference, if you want to do that, if you prioritize doing that, and your ability to execute is there, there's a whole lot that you can do to make a whole lot more money for your business and make a whole lot of your sellers and shareholders and all the rest of the folks a lot happier. And hey, when the sellers make their numbers, so the rest of the organization gets their bonuses too. So success is there if you're the light bulb that wants to change. So with that, I will turn it over to the folks at Inside Sales to take it from here.
Thanks, Mike. This is great. The value-based selling, sales process, making sure that you can leverage existing accounts because you sold them value in the first place and now you're upselling, sales training, and then ultimately leadership. I think those are things we can all learn from. Now I know, Mike, you've got a couple of ways to engage. One of them we have right here in this free white paper. Do you want to spend a couple of seconds on that?
Sure. So I mentioned that this was from the data that you saw today was from the top performing sales organization study. That's not even out yet. And the study you can't get. That's only available to our clients and to folks that are part of our research panel. So there's one thing. If you want to be a part of our research panel and you're a sales leader at an organization, not a salesperson, but sales leader, then you can just email me at mschultz, that's MSCHULTZ, @raingroup.com. I'm easy to find. Google Mike Schultz Rain, and you can contact me. But we did publish a report with a whole bunch of the pieces of data, some that you didn't see in this presentation, about how to drive your win rate up. And I mentioned doing the analysis on driving win rates is huge for driving revenue. If you want to see what we think about how to do that, you can just go to raingroup.com/win and get a free white paper of called Increase Your Win Rates. So there's one, and I know the next slide, and I'll just do this quickly, and I'll say we do sales consulting and training. We work for organizations that are in B2B or have a complex sale. So banking, financial services, healthcare, hospitality, professional and business services, technology, and telecommunications. And we do sales consulting and training. So if you want your organization to drive more sales performance and you want your people to be able to sell better, give us a call. And also, we can benchmark your organization against our top-performing sales organization database and see how you guys stack up. So, again, we're easy to find. Just reach out, and happy to
that's great.
Happy to start talking.
Yeah. You know, guys, what I really like about the Rain Group approach, and Mike, your research is, it's data. A lot of times we talk about sales as an art. I think more and more we're realizing that there are some discernible patterns to success, but to take the time to go research and articulate some of those patterns, I mean, I'm going to go download this white paper. I think everyone should get a copy of it. It's real data that we can use. And just to tie it into what Inside Sales is all about, we really focus on exclusively on the science side of selling. It's a sales acceleration platform that sits right between lead generation and logging a closed won deal in your CRM. We'll talk a little bit more about how that drives those activities. We have worked with companies big and small. Our objective is to help drive more sales. And the secret sauce that sits beneath InsideSales.com platform is a platform we call Neurolytics. We've tracked over 81 billion sales interactions across all of our customers all around the world, big and small, all industries. And we've been able to anonymize and then extract from that certain patterns. And those patterns are both predictive, but more importantly, prescriptive of which types of activities are going to lead to success. So if making a phone call to a vice president of HR in Minneapolis on 9 o'clock on a Tuesday morning has typically been a fruitful activity, then we'll suggest more of that. If it typically has been the wrong time to call her, or the wrong title to call, or the wrong industry to call, then we'll suggest less of it. And that applies to phone calls. It applies to emails. It applies. The data can also be prescriptive about which types of people you hire, and then how you drive their performance, both through motivation and also through prioritizing and forecasting. So that's generally what Inside Sales platform does. And a way to think about it in concert with what Mike has covered today is, there is technology that can keep your funnel moving. In this picture, that's the conveyor belt. I make sure that the right pieces of the funnel are filled with the right accounts, and that I'm moving them along at the right pace. I'm doing the right activities against the right accounts. Now, once that account shows up in front of you, now what do you do with it? Well, that's skill. So that's value-based selling. That's making sure that I can do cross-sell, upsell later, that I can actually sell into my existing account base. That's leadership. Those are things that you're going to depend on a group like the Rain Group to help you with. So technology can make sure that the right things show up in the right sequence, right cadence, right time. Skills can help make sure that you do the right things with them. That's a good, simple way to think about the interplay between our content today and our collaboration between InsideSales.com and the Rain Group. So, guys, we're going to transition to Q&A. This webinar is recorded. You will get a copy of it. You will be able to share it. And if there are any questions, we've answered a lot of them along the way as we've gone. Some of them were just clarification around, wait, what was number 3? What was number 2? But if there are any other questions right now would be the time to enter them. Okay, so Mike Schultz, you mentioned 66% of elite performers believe their managers have the necessary skills to manage and coach sellers. What are some of the coaching best practices you've seen increase those numbers?
Okay, so I think that that's a really good question. So what do the coaches do when they do coaching right? Well, first of all, they coach versus pour over pipeline reports and push people that it's the end of the month to hurry up and close business. That doesn't really help. They actually coach. Now, if you think about coaching, most people in their mind start to think about opportunity coaching. All right, I need to help them win deals. And that's a part of it, and that's a really important part of it. So here's one thing from an opportunity coaching perspective that I've seen a lot of coaches mess up, is that they take some coaching class, and in the coaching class, they learn that, you really don't want to give people the answers. They have to figure it out themselves. You have to teach a man to fish so he can fish for his life. If you give him a fish, he'll eat for a day. That's fine for executive coaching. You're going to go lead a big meeting. Maybe, the person just sort of guides you through it but doesn't tell you what to do. Then you fall on your face and you talk about what you learned, and there's no blood on the floor, but you get up and you do better next month, and then 2 years later you're ready to lead the big division. But this is sales. We're talking about live bullets here. Don't you dare let them out of your office without helping them figure out exactly what to do to win that sale. They're going to have their share of losses, and there's going to be plenty of learning, but you should be facilitative, of course, but you should also be directive when you need to be. So that's one on opportunity coaching. But opportunity coaching is only part of coaching. The other two parts of coaching that are really important are personal effectiveness coaching. Now, that sounds kind of Tony Robbins-ish, but I mean it in do they do the right things? Are they managing their time properly? Are they managing their day properly? Do they have goals? Are their activities matched up to what their goals are? And are you actually working with them to say, hey, those things that you said you were going to do, did you do them? Why or why not? What got in your way? How are we going to do it next month? So there's the personal effectiveness part of it, and then there is the executive coaching part of it to say, hey, not only going to help you win deals and manage your time and day and keep the organization off your back and help you just do the things that are going to help you win, but where do you need to be in 2 years to be awesome? And let's think of a plan for what we're going to do for you to make you be awesome in a few years. And if you can do all those three things, you're going to be doing a lot to be an effective sales coach.
I think that's great advice. It's cool. We'll get into an engagement, and just to reflect what you just said, technology will drive a lot of uplift, but that simple thing about how do I manage my day, like literally with no technology involved, we can see people go from here, individual performers go from here to there, or individual teams who have a good manager go from here to there, just literally blocking out things like you said, setting goals, working towards them, managing my day, doing prospecting for an hour in the morning, power hour, doing follow-up for, in the late morning, returning to prospecting right after lunch, just blocking out your day and having a purpose and an organized day. There's 3 questions that have come in, Mike, that are all interrelated. I'm sure you get this all the time. They're all about the ROI on sales training. How do I measure it? How do I get my owners or executive team to fund it? How would you respond to that?
Oh, yeah. So how do you actually measure the effective sales training? So you can do it at 4 levels. One, and this is the thing that trainers always laugh at, but it's really important, is just how satisfied were the people with the training. So the thing is if you don't make training, whether it's an hour or 2 days or 3 days, if you don't make it a good experience, they won't accept anything that they thought that they learned there, and they won't come back. So you have to make training a good experience. Second, you have to figure out if it was effective in developing the skill or the knowledge. Now, don't test for knowledge on a written test, because sellers don't sell writing, they sell talking. So you actually have to make sure that they can use any knowledge in conversation, and with any skill you have to observe it. Now, there's some great things that you can do with simulations these days, and we're using those, but you have to know, did they actually gain the skill or knowledge? The third thing is they have to be applying the behaviors, and that's where the coaching comes in. Hey, were you able to drive new ideas at 5 of your clients this week, around all the things you had to react to? What did you do? How did it go? Oh, you didn't apply it? All right, well, we're going to do it next week, yeah? Without the coaching and without the expectation reinforcement and accountability, you're in trouble. And then the fourth thing is business results. Hey, I'm actually selling more. I did a strategic account plan following our new process, and I drove 3 ideas, which resulted in 5 opportunities that closed at $275,000. Now the account is $1.5 million and not $1.2 million. So you can actually track the business results. But if you're doing sales training so that it's applied behaviors, you have to know what you want from those behaviors, and you can get the results.
I really like that tracking. You probably have to dip your toe in the water in order to sort of close the loop, but tracking the wins, tracking them back to the coaching and the training, and then using that as your ROI case to go double down and invest some more seems like a really logical progression. We're going to run out of time. We've got more questions than we're going to get to. There was a couple of questions related to data and specifically InsideSales.com and the Neurolytics platform. Where do the data come from? What if I don't have good data? Which data are used to make predictions? I'll answer that quickly, and then if we have time, we'll go to one last question. The cool thing about the Inside Sales platform is every single interaction is logged automatically into Salesforce. So yes, it is a plug-in into Salesforce. Because it's connected to telephony and because it's connected to email, all of those activities are automatically logged. Your reps don't have to remember to log a call or log an email. It's automatically logged. Now, if we're starting out of the gates and we have had haphazard logging and you don't want to use kind of the data that sits in your Salesforce today, there's also a generic model, a consortium model that can be used to generically help prioritize activities. But very quickly, as we start to log calls, start to track results of opportunities, whether they close win or don't close win, very quickly the model starts to switch over to your specific data and the training that we do of the model given your specific activities with your customers in your market. So last question, this will be for you, Mike, and then we'll wrap up. How often should a sales team get training?
Oh, that's a great question because that's actually changed a lot in the last few years. I'm going to say every day. And you might think like, okay, you're being crazy. No, 20 years ago, how did we do sales training? We grabbed our PowerPoints, we put them under our arms, we did 2 days of training, and then you left. Well, now you can and should do that, but it's changed a lot. You can do a lot of the knowledge transfer. What are the things I'm supposed to be doing? What is this method? What's the language I need to use? You can do that through online training before they come to class. Then you can come to the class, and they can really practice with it, so you don't have to waste time on as much time on lecture. It becomes a lot more interactive. And then after the training, you should be reinforcing with a variety of technologies that can pop onto their phones through apps, that can come into their email, that have little slow drips of reminders of things like what they learned. You know, there's plenty of research that show if you touch people 6 times on really tiny nuggets of information after they hear it once, they're 90% likely to retain it. But you only hear it once, they're only about 10% likely to retain it. And we're talking about taking no time while you touch them every day. You can be doing this with knowledge, with skills, with background information that can help them sell, like interesting information in cases. But you have to design it the right way. So if you can make it consumable and make it so they are willing to see it, watch it, and do it in small chunks, not only can you be doing, and by the way, the average skills training is about 6 days a year. The high performers and the better companies are doing upwards of 8, and the lower performers are doing nothing to 4. But the better performers are doing around 6 core days of skills training, where you might do a couple of classes with companies like ours. But you can make it 10 times more effective than it ever was by making it an ongoing kind of thing that's also not obtrusive.
Wow, I love that. So 6 to 8 days of kind of discrete events, and then ongoing kind of drip feed, check-in, accountability, coaching. That certainly fits with the way we all consume, educate ourselves these days. Nobody checks out of for a month to go to some offsite academy. You've got to learn it in the flow and in context. Well, this has been great, Mike. Thank you. I'm really glad we were able to connect on this. honored to have everybody join us. It was an impressively sized group, and the questions are really good. Sorry we didn't get to all of them, but we will get to them afterwards. And the recorded webinar will be sent out to you for reference. Thanks, everybody, for joining.